So, as part of National Customer Service Week, we've been investigating the future of artificial intelligence, AI, and what this means for the customer service industry. Today, we have Sarah Burnett, who is a tech evangelist at KYP.ai, which is a productivity and process mining platform, who we've recently partnered with for our brand new product Aid, which is Arvato's discovery engine. She's also a renowned tech analyst and the author of The Autonomous Enterprise, Powered by AI, which I've got a copy of right here, and that's published by BCS, who are the Chartered Institute for IT. So within this interview and discussion, we're going to be discussing generative AI, human performance, knowledge work, privacy and data concerns, as well as the ethical use of AI. So good morning, Sarah. Thank you very much.
Morning, Al. Thank you for asking me.
No problem. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me and Arvato. So we've got quite a few questions to get through. So yeah, let's begin if that's okay with you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Lovely. So the first one is McKinsey have recently released research that shows that generative AI will perform at a median level of human performance by the end of this decade. Our question really to you is whether you agree with that research from McKinsey, or do you think it could be even sooner?
Well, I think it's possible. I think it's possible across some capabilities. I'm sure generative AI, as McKinsey has predicted, will equal, if not overtake, human capability in areas like creating art from descriptions.
Yeah.
To do with writing content, coding, and
Yeah.
lots of different areas. I'm not entirely sure. I saw their research and I realized that they're also predicting that AI would match human capability in some areas like emotion detection and social interactions. I'm a bit doubtful about that. And I'll tell you why. It's because I think the way that AI is being trained for emotion detection doesn't give it enough context.
Right.
So,
Okay.
for example, when it comes to detecting human emotions, it's often based on facial expressions from images.
Yes.
And I think that's very narrow. For example, you could be frowning because you're concentrating, or you could be frowning because you're unhappy or angry,
Yeah.
So I believe there are some limitations there that they need to overcome. And unfortunately, it's already being used for emotion detection in lots of different software. I hear, for example, in some HR organizations are using it for detecting whether a person is enthusiastic or not. That kind of thing is really scary.
Yeah, sounds very Orwellian, doesn't it?
Yes.
I think just touching on that point as well, we've been talking a lot about vulnerable customers and vulnerability with AI. I'm thinking about facial expressions of people with disabilities and other factors like that. Again, what's your opinion? That must make it quite difficult for AI to even, be able to read someone's face.
Yes, well, there's already talk of it not being able to cope with those kinds of situations, and also people who are, of sort of some of the minorities, some of the sort of that there isn't enough diversity in the training, and that's always an issue, with anything, with any kind of software. I think even not having a diverse team in the development team can matter. But AI can have such a massive effect that I think we need to get that right. And the same with sentiment analysis in text, when, there's when you handle customer complaints. I think that's got to take more of a contextual approach. And, humans, we can be trying to make fun of something and it might come across as sarcastic, which could indicate irritation or anger, So that's the area I think I'm doubtful about. But I'm very happy to be challenged, and I'm very happy to be completely wrong, because so much is going on, so much research and development. ChatGPT caught us all up by surprise. It was just incredible. Yeah.
I mean, going back to, not being able to tell people's context over email, even as a human, I often, my jokes don't land over email. So,
Exactly,
have to deal with that. So
how often have we made a quick reply to something thinking, right, got that done, and then it's come across as abrupt and caused all kinds of issues, when it hasn't been meant in that way. But
exactly.
These things happen, don't they? And can AI cope with it and not make a decisive judgment about it? Because if we have a situation where cars are looking at your facial expressions and you have an accident and they say you were, angry and it was due to road rage when you were actually concentrating on where you were going, things like that could really matter. And we need to get it right.
Yes, definitely. That's lovely. So in terms of the automation of knowledge work, then obviously we talk a lot at Arvato in particular about automating repetitive tasks, things that can easily be automated. In terms of knowledge work, can we expect this to improve in the next decade or so as well? Or, in your book, I think you mentioned that you state that automation turns the traditional knowledge work inside out. So I wondered if you could just touch on that a little more.
I believe that as automation, more processes are automated, the way that we work. So in an organization where people are sitting or working on their computers, effectively we're teams of people working on similar kind of functions in in groups. I think that will change. I think it will be more the robots, the solutions, the automations doing the work and the people supervising those automations. And that's will definitely happen. I'm absolutely certain about that. As to how much of each process will get automated, that very much depends on the type of process and the capabilities of AI as it develops faster and faster. But we are already able to automate things that we couldn't last year because of ChatGPT coming along and enabling us to automate content creation, coding and web development. And there were solutions there before that, but they were very niche and they weren't quite as capable and not able to do it so easily within seconds. It's phenomenal. But what I see is more human augmentation at the moment. So you might use ChatGPT to start you off on some piece of content. How far that will go and how quickly it will become end to end. And I would advise people to always check whatever's produced, take it as a starting point rather than as a complete solution. But there are areas where it's actually delivering significant benefits. There's one example, one of my colleagues wrote a blog about it, where a team in pharma that's doing pricing calculations has automated those calculations with generative AI. So they have the pricing template and generative AI does the calculations. And over a week, I believe they're saving more than an FTE in terms of the time that it used to take. So that's significant and that can't be ignored by any business. It's got to be taken into account. So all kinds of new processes. The other aspect of it is, so there's generative AI that allows you to automate a lot more than before. But then generative AI in combination with other technologies is a whole other chapter in this development. So I'm talking to intelligent automation vendors who tell me they're going to integrate it with their solutions. So they'll be able to provide better search. They'll be able to provide conversational interfaces. Among other things. I mean, some of them are telling me that it's going to make the training of their AI a lot easier as well. So we're going to see this wave of development thanks to the availability of generative AI as well.
Brilliant. So it's all very exciting. I mean, obviously, there is that fear factor around it for a lot of companies. But again, you mentioned in your book about companies that are getting left behind or just implementing technology for implementing technology's sake rather than looking at the end goal, and actually looking at what they want to achieve. So, but from your perspective as well, which industries would you say stand to gain the most from AI? If not all, but there's got to be a few that kind of are the standouts that you would say.
I think there's some industries that perhaps were lagging and they'll be able to catch up. I'm thinking of some of the sort of professions, legal firms and so on. I think they'll be able to do a lot more than before. I'm also hearing that consultancies are using generative AI to help them develop bids for contracts. And so it's speeding up that side of their business as well. So I believe legal and professional services, they'll gain a lot from generative AI. I think global business service organizations will benefit hugely because they have their procedures and processes for things like accounting or technical support or whatever it is that they are doing for their customers. And then suddenly they can add all these other things and improve what they're doing, do it faster and better, maybe even change, give new options for pricing, that kind of thing. But perhaps other areas, I think include any of the horizontal functions like HR and in particular customer service. I think it's going to be revolutionized.
Well, we're hoping so.
Yeah, definitely. I just think of technical support, for example. You can have generative AI produce highly specialist virtual agents that can help, virtual assistants to your agents, to your technical support folks, who can find the information much faster. They can be very specific, and if the first level support is stuck, they can go on to and find an expert and bring them into the conversation, either live with a customer or actually supporting the first line level support agent. And the same with any customer interaction channel. I think the ability to provide guidance online. I've been talking about this for some time now, for some years, but this is really changing the way that guidance could be provided online as to the next step, to compliance steps, all of those kinds of things. But then there's a whole new level of customization, personalization that's going to happen, because I think in a similar way, generative AI could help produce chatbots or assistants that are very much personalized for the customer, using the kind of language that appeals to the customer, going by their past history and previous interactions, using the kind of words, the word choices that the customer likes, and generally just being able to do conversations in natural language, building trust, because unfortunately chatbots haven't always been good, have they? Some of them have been.
They haven't, and some companies they're still not great. But totally agree. Sometimes I've had conversations where it is a conversation, but it's felt very stilted, and that point you've just made there about kind of speaking the same language as the customer, and that personalization, it goes beyond just addressing the customer as their name or their preferred pronouns and things like that. It's actually reflecting their language. I've had chatbots that have sent me emojis back when I started using emojis, so that's it's really cool to see. It's definitely something we're exploring at Arvato.
Right. And then there's the internationalization aspect for global companies to be able to converse in all the languages that they support more easily than they do now, and being able to internationalize and localize products, all that and services. I think all of those will be helped by generative AI.
Brilliant. So it's very exciting for everyone then. So in terms of specific activities. So what AI or automated activities will deliver the most value for organizations? I think you've touched on that a little bit there with chatbots and agent assist and things like that, but are there any other specific tasks or activities that you think are going to add a lot of value by being automated or using AI?
Well, honestly, I think it will vary a lot. So there are the horizontal functions that I mentioned, like customer support, customer service, HR, those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, it depends on how complex your processes are and what you know about them. And this is where I'm afraid I have to do a bit of a plug for KYP.ai, because it gives you the intelligence that you need in order to choose. So why wouldn't you do it in a data-driven fashion? We have the ability to get visibility into how things are being done, and as well as optimizing them, then choosing what could be automated, getting recommendations for what technology to use to automate the identified process, and then the business case for it as well. So it will be, changing decision making significantly, because by using these technologies together, and other intelligent automation solutions, you can significantly increase the return on investment. So the value generation is now really going through a different kind of a different scale of potential and opportunity, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not just the financial side of things, the ROI and save bringing time back to the company. It's that well-being of employees, and obviously that's one of the things that KYP.ai shows so well through the software, is how productive someone is being, but also if they're being stretched too far, is there anything that the company can do to help and alleviate any concerns? So it's an all-rounder. It's not just for processes, and it's not just for return on investment. It's to help employees and humans, basically.
Absolutely. And you can also find opportunities to help them. So
exactly,
talking about augmentation, helping them do things faster and achieve more, so they're more engaged, they're proud of what they do, and they value the tools that you're putting in their hands. I think that's really important. And we all know, despite all this talk of intelligent automation and scaling up, humans are required. My model in my book talks about the fact that there is, there's going to have to be supervision. You've got to think about, where is the knowledge going to be held? How are you going to maintain the knowledge of your processes, your formulae, all the things that you do as a business that make up your business? Are you going to trust all of that to AI, or are you going to make sure that there are generations of employees that can continue their business? And for succession planning, all of that is really important.
You touched on that about when employees leave, and staff turnover, does that knowledge go with them of the processes? And obviously it can't. So that training is vital, and it's that supervision role that cannot be performed by AI. It has to be performed by humans. So that's that's going to be reassuring, I think, to a lot of people. We don't want to implement AI to take people's jobs. It's being implemented to augment, to assist, to help, and just for further help companies and employees. So brilliant.
Absolutely.
So we'll go on to the last couple of questions, which we spoke about previously, that we could perhaps talk about these at the same time. So what are your thoughts on privacy risks and data breaches because of the increased use of AI, and also what safeguards are needed to ensure responsible use of AI as well? You talk a lot in your book about ethical AI. I really like that phrase. I think that will be very reassuring to a lot of people. How do we make it ethical? So if you could touch on the privacy risks because of this increased use.
Well, there are risks, and we can't deny them. The fact that AI needs an awful lot of data to be trained in the first place and validated. How is that data managed? Where is it coming from? How is it sourced? Those are all really important questions, and I think as an industry we need to answer those questions and be transparent about how we do things, so that we can win trust. there have been far too many tools and apps that harvest information without our knowledge. And that kind of thing needs to be stopped. And this is where I think industry and governments need to work together to produce guidelines, frameworks that manage the way that A, it's developed, and B, it's used. And it's good to see some governments, starting to act and take steps. The risk is we'd limit development. We don't want to limit development. It's finding the right balance between managing it and allowing it to develop.
Definitely.
I think starting with data, the way that you source it, if you ensure that it's ethically sourced, that you do use third-party tools. There are a lot of third-party tools out there that validate the model for truthfulness, for fairness, all these kinds of things. I hear they're quite difficult to use. They're quite time-consuming to implement, and take a lot of effort, particularly as a lot of AI companies are startups. They don't have the sort of manual capability, the resources to use some of these technologies. So we need to come up with better solutions. And I think it will happen. I think over time, all these things will be developed, and we will have guidelines. I'm really encouraged when I see vendors talk about how ethically they develop things, and I think that kind of thing will become really quite important as time goes by.
I think so, because I was just going to say, touching on that point about vendors and putting their own guidelines together. I think when we at Arvato, we have to submit a lot of tenders, a lot of bids, and I think based on your point there, a lot of companies and especially public authorities, local authorities, things like that, are going to start wanting to see how we ethically use AI in bids and in responses to tenders and things like that. So do you think, again, that's something that will start to happen?
I think so. Yes, absolutely. And I think it's going to be one of the many kind of ESG type requirements.
That's what I was thinking.
Yes, requirements, and the sooner the better, really, as far as I'm concerned. I called for it in my book about the importance of ethical development and ethical use. As for AI in the wrong hands, in the hands of bad actors, that's a serious threat. That really, it requires intergovernmental sort of cooperation to address that, working together with the industry. But it's a huge area that we need to tackle.
I think we could have had an entire conversation about the ethical dilemma of AI, but that's really interesting. Is there anything else that you kind of want to add in terms of the future of AI, or do you feel like we've kind of covered everything in those questions?
I think we shouldn't be afraid of it. I think we should use the capabilities that are available today, from not only as corporations to automate processes, but as individuals, helping ourselves to do our work faster and better, to keep up with developments, because a huge amount is happening, and see what works for us. So I encourage teams to look at what works for them, what would help them, and not to be afraid of it. For now, AI isn't self-aware. It's not going to take over the world. It might happen, and some of the experts tell us it's quite likely in the future, but we're not there yet. And so let's use it to our advantage, in terms of business and work, and see what it can do for us.
Yeah, definitely. That's brilliant. Well, thank you again, Sarah. It's been lovely talking to you, and I'm sure this will be extremely interesting for people to watch and kind of think about these ideas and topics in their head as well. Lots of opinions on AI and especially within business, but very, very interesting and insightful. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That's lovely.